Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our very intimate Bi Erasure panel. My name is Lev Alexander. I'm your host for today. A little bit about me. I'm the head of media and communications at Bi Pride UK, and I'm the founder and creative director for Unicorn magazine. But enough about me, because we have two amazing panelists from the Bi community today to talk to us about Bi Erasure. I'm going to do, first of all, a quick intro about the panel and about some house rules and definitions. Then we're going to get some introductions from our two panelists. We're going to ask some key questions about Bi Erasure and Bi visibility. If we have time, we'll finish with some quick fire questions, and then we'll get some social media plugs and project plugs out there for our audience. So today our panel will discuss the issues surrounding Bi Erasure. The panelists will explore the importance of Bi visibility and the harm of external and internal Bi Erasure, and how the LGBTQ+ community can move past harmful stereotypes and work together for a more inclusive environment. But before we begin, there's some language that I need to clear up. This is the fun part. So when I mean bi, I mean everyone in the non-monosexual umbrella. So if you think of the sexual spectrum, there's the two binaries of gay and straight, and then everything in the middle is what we mean by bi. Bi is an umbrella term. So bi could mean bisexual, pansexual, queer, fluid, flex, just everything that isn't gay or straight. And by Pride UK, or as a charity, we cater for the non-monosexuals, so everyone in between. Then another clarification between bisexuality and pansexuality, because it's quite a hot topic for some people. The only difference between these two sexualities is bisexual is attraction to more than one gender, and pansexuality is attraction regardless of gender. So if anyone says bisexuality is binary, don't listen to them, it's not true. That's the only clarification, is bisexuality is gendered, but just more than one gender, and pansexuality is regardless of gender. So that's all the house rules and little definitions from me, but let's get introduced to our lovely panelists. So let's start with Jonathan. Do you want to give a quick intro to you, your work, and what you do?
Yeah, so thanks, Lev. So I'm Jonathan Andrews. I am a lawyer at Reed Smith, a global law firm doing entertainment media law. And since before I was a future trainee there, I've been involved in the London Bi Network, which is kind of a network, the first ever network specifically for bi issues, which works across companies and firms in the City of London, and also more broadly to just educate on Bi Erasure and barriers bi people face, and is open to bi people and people who don't identify as bi but want to be allies, or who just want to learn a bit more about it.
Fantastic, thank you. Vineet, let's move on to you. Give us a little background about your amazing activism in our community.
So hi everyone, my name is Vineet. My pronouns are he, him. I was born and raised in South London, West London, and I am Indian and bisexual. I work as a software engineer for GenTrack as my day job, but outside of that I do a lot of different things. So I am a writer. I've had one of my pieces published in a bisexual anthology called The Bible. I run a YouTube channel with my friend Lo called The Ambassadors on bisexuality. I volunteer for Rainbow Films, who made a film which was in BFI Flair, but coronavirus, and Middlesex Pride. And I also created the Bisexual Men Exist hashtag online.
What's the number of likes at the moment for that hashtag?
I've lost count.
Yeah, that was great. A little fun fact for everyone watching: Vineet and I were on the exact same panel about a month ago, which I was also hosting. So this is going to be a walk in the park. Right. So thank you so much, Jonathan and Vineet. Let's move on to some really, I guess, important and really relevant questions around Bi Erasure and Bi visibility. So I'll ask a couple of questions, get you to bounce off each other, and then if we have time, we'll get to maybe some fun, quick ones at the end. So I think, Jonathan, let's start with you. I think it's important to hear some personal stories, just for our audience, for the wider community around us. How has Bi Erasure affected you in your life?
Mm. Girl, yeah, I think like Bi Erasure is something that, you know, affects so many people, and part of why I really wanted to sort of work to set up the London Bi Network, and to help others, was actually kind of how it had personally kind of affected me. And so when I was kind of growing up, I knew when I was about, say, 9 or 10, that I wasn't completely straight, that I had attraction to people from different genders, and I didn't really have a word for that at the time. Like, I mean, there was kind of at school, there was kind of a moment of the idea of something being gay existed, even if people didn't quite get what it was. They generally knew it was something to do with being different sexually. But there wasn't really any kind of real education or any real understanding of like anything, in terms of like not being attracted to just one gender. And so like the issue was there wasn't really any language there, and it was quite difficult to kind of work out, are you straight or are you gay, when you actually don't really fit into either of those boxes. And it actually meant that, you know, I kind of just assumed that because I was attracted to women, I couldn't be anything but straight, because, you know, that was kind of the box that seemed to fit, and gay didn't, because I was attracted to women, and people would sort of, you know, it didn't quite feel like I fit anywhere. And that was obviously because I wasn't part of either box. I was, in my own identity, I was bi. But because that language wasn't really there, and it was a kind of assumption that you attracted to either one or the other, and if you're not, then you're lying about it, or you're kind of hiding something, or you're just confused. I, you know, kind of, I think, suppressed subconsciously kind of as that side of me, until I was really, you know, like a teenager, mid to late teens. And then I kind of really, you know, when you actually go and look into it yourself and find that this kind of thing does exist, but it wasn't really there wider in society, for me to kind of just pick up by osmosis, like the idea of being straight or being gay was. And so it really sort of affected how I identified, and how I felt that I kind of had to focus on one side of me rather than the other side, rather than just focusing on your whole self. And obviously now, you know, I do identify bi, and I have done since I've been about sort of 17, when I've really understood kind of the fact that actually, you know, you can be attracted to more than one gender, that absolutely makes sense, and it's completely acceptable, and it exists. You know, that's the main point. It actually exists. When, you know, I wouldn't have known that, you know, beforehand, because people weren't talking about it. And I do often, you know, still find people can be quite confused about it themselves, and you do have to find yourself going to kind of explain to people and coming up multiple times to the same person, when you know, which does give that added complication. But actually, I find it's much better to be open about it now, and you know, because I want to be my whole self. And that's what we've really been trying to do for the Bi Network, is to spread that awareness kind of more widely. So while it does affect me still, I think the fact that actually now I understand for myself, it doesn't affect me as much as it did. But that's also where we really need to make sure that, you know, people growing up are aware of the fact that bisexuality exists, and it's equal to being straight or being gay, you know, or any other way that you might want to identify. Because if people don't know that when they're growing up, it's quite difficult for them to really feel like they can be their whole selves, if their whole self and that identity to them isn't even talked about, and people think it doesn't even exist.
Absolutely, I think that's a good point. There's so much work to be done for the younger generations,
Yeah.
And the stats prove more and more younger generations and younger people are considerably more bi than ever before. Actually, the latest stat from America, who are a few years ahead of us, points to the fact that the majority of young people are now queer. They've overtaken identify as completely straight. So it's I guess up to us and up to the wider community to take on this generation, you know, tell them it's okay, you know. Vinny, let's finish off with this question with you. Do you have any personal stories about how Bi Erasure has affected you in your day-to-day?
Yeah, so my experiences were very similar. I definitely knew that I wasn't straight when I was around about 11, but I also didn't have the word, and the only thing that I knew was straight or gay. And it wasn't until I was 17 that I learned the word bi in the form of bi-curious. But when I was told what the word was, it was immediately ridiculed at the same time. So I just never saw it as a valid option. So the constant bi erasure meant that I actually didn't come out until I was 24, because I just found ways to deny myself to myself, because I couldn't accept bisexual as a thing that I could be, because I knew people would just say, well, you're gay. And because I was so different from the way men acted as well, people just labeled me as gay anyway. So I knew if I expressed the feelings that I had, immediately they'll be like, okay, so he's gay. And I think media representation has a big part to play in that as well. A lot of the storylines that we had, it was similar, where it was a straight person who then turned out to be gay, like they a straight man, then they had sex with another man, and then it's like, oh, actually they were gay the whole time, and they never really gave an edgeways to exploring any sort of other identities, exploring bisexuality in that space. Because whilst that storyline is completely valid, it's the only storyline they ever showed, and it was the only storyline I ever saw. So I was like, well, I'm having these feelings for men now, so clearly I'm gay. So it constantly made it hard, because we just didn't have anything to look up to or to see to help affirm that identity.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you for sharing. Let's move on to, so obviously bi erasure is really damaging to people who suffer from it, and we also suffer from internalized bi erasure when we're confused about sexuality and where we fit in, so we kind of forget that this middle ground does exist. How are ways that we can celebrate our own identities? Vinny, let's go back to you quickly for this one.
So I feel like you can't really expect people to be able to accept or celebrate their own identity unless you can give them examples of people doing that themselves. So like I said, with the media constantly not showing bisexuality, it just meant that you can't see that as something that's valid. And I know there's so much power in being visible, because it helps other people feel like they can accept it and be visible in themselves. Like the hashtag that I made, at least 2 people came out with that hashtag, because they saw it so celebrated and so open and so accepted, yeah, so celebrated in that space, that they felt, well, I can be that too. And I've seen it countless times where people will go, I was inspired by you to come out. And I've really done very small things, and yet I've managed to help some people. And I think that that's the way that we do it. We need to make sure that if we can be, we're as visible as we can, so that other people can do it as well. But I also think really important to have spaces for people. So like Jonathan has made spaces, having those kind of spaces available for people, because most of the time when I feel comfortable in my bisexuality is when I'm with other bisexual people, because I can discuss things so openly, but without having any sort of backlash, because immediately they get it. So I think having those spaces are important as well.
I think that's an excellent segue into Jonathan's network. How do you celebrate people within your professional network, Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks. So in terms of our, London Bi network, we are very much set up to work across different strands of work. And initially we were started within the City of London, so things like law firms, banks and insurers, but actually we've broadened out over the years, because we found that the interest for people wanting to get involved in networks has been much broader. So we also kind of work representing the charity sector. We also have people who kind of work in the public sector as well. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter what kind of industry you're working in, to be honest, because the message that we're getting out there is the same. Is very much about bi people exist. There are bi people in organisations, whether the people in charge of the organisations know that there are or not. Bi people are contributing in many ways to the economy and to society, and you want them to feel open and aware of who they are. You want people to be supportive and to actually recognise what bisexuality is, so that they can support others. If they're not personally bi themselves, they can support others who may be facing biphobia or bi erasure, and they know not to perpetuate that themselves. by sort of asking things which to them might seem quite straightforward and simple questions, because they may not be used to, well, they live in that kind of media world where bisexuality until recently hasn't been focused on at all, and actually to educating people on how to be good allies, but then also for bi people themselves, a place where we can kind of get together and discuss the issues that really matter to us, and just part of it is actually being able to just get together, have those networks, and have support, and to talk about those issues, and we're very much keen to focus on bi visibility as a whole. The fact that as Luke said, it's really important that people can see others like themselves, whether that's in the workplace or wider society, actually having those characteristics and being like them, because it gets people to think, I can be in that role myself, I can I can achieve that, or I can understand that's how I feel, that's the experience that I have, and I now understand what that means for me, and it's so difficult when you don't have that. But then also we're particularly keen to tackle issues like poor mental health among bi people. Now, I'm sure you'll be aware, LGBT plus mental health as a whole is generally worse, according to stats, than non-LGBT plus mental health. But bi and trans people particularly face quite poor mental health in comparison to the rest of the community as well. And I think a lot of that can be down to kind of the questioning about whether an existence is accurate or not. How a lot of homophobia can be kind of based on a lot of aggression against gay and lesbian people, but not necessarily against the idea that they actually exist. Whereas often with bi and trans, it can be particularly focused on like whether that doesn't exist, or you're just kind of you're not who you say you are, and that can have a real impact on identity. And so what we also do is talk about those kind of mental health struggles, and also put together an environment where people can share openly and talk about how they identify, and be supported for that, and be respected for it, because that's actually how I think we tackle the issues that arise from people feeling that they don't feel included, and people don't respect them and include them for who they are, is to show that we provide that space where people can be accepted and recognised for the identity that they have, that they recognise is right for them, wherever that falls within the bi umbrella.
Yeah, thank you. Let's move on now. So we've talked about bi erasure, we've talked about celebrating and empowering each other within our community. But I think stories that we don't really hear often are particular issues within the BAME communities. So I'd love to go to Vineet and ask you, Vineet, how different is bi representation within BAME communities, and how can we be better allies to BAME people?
So I think the issue within bisexuality within BAME communities, I think it's pretty much similar to what you see in society as a whole, but it's just amplified. So bisexual, like we know, is always made invisible. And that's even truer when you go into the BAME community, which from a personal experience in the British Asian, South Asian, Indian community, it doesn't really accept or talk about sexuality at all. The only thing that they ever really mention is probably gay, and that's not a good thing. So bisexual just isn't accepted. It's again a similar thing where if I expressed any, because I grew up in a very South Asian area, if I expressed any of those feelings, I would immediately have been labeled as gay, probably been called a batty boy, and just ostracized. But on the same hand, when you talk about bisexuality, one of the things that I got when I came out was my mum actually said to me, well, okay, it's fine as long as you then marry a woman. And I think the heteronormative way of thinking is really ingrained as well, which also is another problem. It's the idea where it's like, well, it's fine if you're bisexual, but as long as you adhere to that heteronormative lifestyle, we don't really care, which is just another form of bi erasure, because regardless of if I get married to a woman, have kids, get the house and the car, still bisexual, but they'll just put it out of their mind and go, well, he's straight now, like it doesn't bother them. So I think that's one of the big problems. I think in terms of being an ally to LGBT people of color, I've said this before, and I'm going to be very blunt, but I kind of just need white people to just stop talking, because when white people are talking, that means that they're talking over us, and if they're talking over us, it means they're not listening to us. Because at the end of the day, being LGBT as a whole, not just bisexual, but LGBT and a person of color, comes with so many extra added complications and complexities that white people are just categorically not going to understand. Like, there's no two ways about it, you're just not going to get it. And so, to be blunt, I don't care about the opinion of white people when it comes to these kind of things. The only thing that white people should be doing is taking a step back, listening to what we have to say, and then using whatever way they can to make space for us to help amplify our voice. So when they are talking on a certain issue, they're talking from what they've learned from us, but rather than that, just handing over the mic and just give it over to us.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. I think something that we talked about on the other panel as well was admitting when you've made a mistake, or when you've said something that you shouldn't have, or if there's a better way of phrasing stuff. Accepting the fact that you can learn and you are constantly learning about these communities, I think is incredibly important. Speaking about being allies in the community, Jonathan, let's explore how particularly LG people can be better allied by communities.
Yeah, so this is a big plank of what the London Bi Network does, but also more widely, I think it's just really important to recognise that allyship, isn't just about non-LGBT towards that community, but it's also within that community, and kind of understanding the different experiences that we have, and actually in a way it's kind of similar to Vineet's point, that it's about listening to other parts of that community that don't have the experiences that you do, and listening to them, right, not talking over them, but actually advocating based on what they've said, and their experiences. And so I think with like the LG community, I know that quite often there can be an assumption that bisexuality is a phase in a lot of people, and I think that can often be because a lot of people who maybe identify as gay or lesbian have kind of initially thought that they were bi, or wanted to kind of make it a sort of less of a blow to people that they think will have those heteronormative views, by kind of phasing their kind of process, by sort of coming out as bi initially, testing the waters, as they might say, and then actually kind of coming out as gay or lesbian, or it could be that they actually is a phase, and that they do kind of progress from being kind of feeling straight to feeling bi to feeling gay, or indeed the other way around, as some people I know have kind of experienced that. But I think the trouble is when a lot of kind of lesbian gay people who've had that experience, or maybe people who've gone through it, then kind of assume well, that's bisexuality, and it's not. It's some people's experiences, and those experiences, as we need to make clear, like those experiences are real, and should be respected. But it's not kind of everybody's, and there are lots of people, myself included, who pretty much bi for forever, and probably will be, and so that kind of assumption that it's always going to be a phase is something that I think comes from people kind of wanting to see their own experience and project on to others, and actually you need to recognise that everyone has a different experience. You want to kind of sit back and listen to people, understand where they're coming from, and understand those differences before they kind of try to say, oh no, it's just because of this or just because of that, and to give another example, like the kind of Bi Erasure that can come around from kind of people kind of asking as well. One of the most common kind of annoying questions I can always get is, so if you're bi, what percentage of attraction are you? And people being like, oh well, are you 50-50? Are you 30-70? As if this is going to try to sort of tip you one way or the other. And I think that this is kind of a complete, like, doesn't really kind of explain what how bisexuality is, because it's attraction to people. You know, anyone's attracted to people. It's really hard for instance, if you said to a gay person, you know, are you 50-60 or are you 40-60 attracted to people with blonde hair over brown or something? So, you know, that's kind of like, it's about very much understanding the experiences people have and recognizing that it's that those are different to yourself, and seeing how it's a different thing. And that's ultimately what we're about, is sharing about bisexuality so people can understand what it is, how it's different, and that's okay.
Okay, I think that is a really good finisher for tough questions. Let's move on. I think very fitting for this panel. If you could erase one bi stereotype, what would it be? Just in one sentence, Vineet, what bi stereotype are you erasing today?
The one that affects me the most, which is the fact that bisexual men don't exist, and we're just actually secretly gay, just because of the way it impacts me, and it really annoys me.
Perfect. Jonathan, are you erasing the percentage stereotype?
I think I would have to, yeah, because it's just something that, you know, is very irritating, and it kind of, you know, it tries to make it into something quite simple, but when actually bisexuality by the umbrella can cover so much. So yeah, I would. Perfect.
Okay, I think we've done a good job in erasing all of that. So thank you all so much for joining us on this virtual panel. It's been great. I think the discussion has been really, really positive and super helpful for our audiences. Before we finish, let's just give out our social media handles for anyone to follow. I think it'll come up on the screen, but just to reiterate it. Vineet, how can people follow you?
I have the very professional handle of Nintendo Mad 888. You will find me on Twitter, Instagram, Medium. You will find links to that to my YouTube, which is the Ambassadors. You will find Middlesex Pride, which is just at Middlesex Pride, and Rainbow Films, which is at LGBT Rainbow Film. Honestly, if you Google my full name or Nintendo Mad 888, I'm probably the only person that has that everywhere, so you'll find me pretty easily.
Thank you very much, Vineet. Jonathan, how can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Johnny J. Andrews. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Jonathan Andrews, and the London Bi Network has our own website. You can just type into Google London Bisexual Network, and we also on LinkedIn and on Twitter as well at Bisexual Network.
Thank you both so much. And for me, it's Lev_XO. And please follow the charity Bi Pride UK. We do some amazing work there, as well as Unicorn Magazine, which is issue 2 at the moment, which Vineet was actually in as well. So yeah, please follow those 2 charities and our lovely panelists. But thank you all so much for listening, and thank you for our panelists taking part. If you want to continue the conversation, please feel free to tweet the panelists using their handle and the hashtag MPConference2020. Thank you.